Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not just destinations.
That's right, we believe they're a journey. And here on the Love Haze, we talk about how to navigate through it.
That's absolutely right. So today, we are going to talk about what it means when people say, keep that same energy.
Same energy.
I believe that there's a little bit more behind that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it. I can't wait to get into this topic.
Let's go.
Let's get into our Black love journey.
Before we get started, we want to shout out our artist friend, creative mastermind behind Artmatic Apparel, JQ Franklin. For those of you who are on YouTube can see that he is the architect of today's vibe for the Love Haze.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that we recognize him. We extremely talented artist, extremely talented creative. You can check out his work and even find out how to grab this swag yourself. His IG handle is Art by JQ Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find this Artmatic swag, and it also has amazing bags. You got hats, hoodies, t-shirts, all of it at artmaticapparel.com. Check the notes on our website for clickable links.
And as you can see, it's fresh as hell, Sean.
Hey,
check your boy.
So clean,
check your boy. So we're going to get right into what it means to tell somebody to keep that same energy. So I've just been noticing that a lot of times people say, keep that same energy when someone does something or says something that you may feel like is insensitive or you don't like, or it's a quick snapback, or you feel like people have said something to maybe even injure you. People frequently say, keep that same energy when it comes back around to you. And what they're really saying is, when you find yourself in the same situation, make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you have that same attitude when it comes back around to you. And I just want us to have some conversation around that, just because I'm finding that I'm not a big fan of keeping that same energy.
I'm a huge fan of it.
And you and I have had discussions about, okay, Scott Hayes, keep that same energy.
Or I'm just matching your energy.
Or I'm just matching your energy. I promise you, I hate to hear I'm just matching your energy. It just disturbs my spirit so bad.
Why does it disturb you?
So let's just go and get into it.
Come on in.
So, so first and foremost, I need to admit that I am the person who was like, when they go low, I take it all the way down to the flow. Right? And to me, that's just another level of keeping that same energy. But if I'm being honest, when I'm gonna keep that same energy, I'm gonna match your energy. What I'm saying is, like, your energy is off. I don't like it. But if we gonna be low, then I'm gonna come down there with you.
I don't think it's that. I think it's, so my mom always said, you can show people better than you can tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm a huge advocate for justice and fairness and equality. Mm-hmm. And I also hate double standards. So saying all of that, if your response got a little bit of attitude on it, I'm gonna meet you where you are. Or you acting a little bit selfish, you want to be inconsiderate. I mean, you know what I mean? That means you're okay with it. So if you're setting the tone for how we're operating, and I totally understand that you gotta be the example you want to see, be the model. And sometimes people don't really understand until they feel what you're feeling.
So first of all, you got a cute voice, but it got a little bit of bass in it. I don't think I appreciate it. But what I'm saying is that I think that I just want to be better. And this is for me. So I think that we can't walk around and talk about having grace and understanding and then tell people at that same time, I'm going to meet you with whatever you came with.
It's not always a neck roll. It's not always this
It
kind of
ain't
energy.
that. It's not that it's always that. But just the idea that I'm going to pull my grace back and I'm going to meet you wherever you brought this conversation to, because I don't like it. that's not us putting into practice what it is that we've been talking about. And for me, I know that I can be better. And for me, I know that when I say keep that same energy or I'm about to match your energy, it's on some negative stuff. It's on like, yes, I'm going to meet you where you are. And if you came at me that way, then that's how I'm going to come at you. And I think that I am called to operate higher vibrationally. And if I'm gonna operate on a lower vibration, then I'm not, I'm not living the sermon that I talk about all the time.
I think it's that assuming. So if you're like people who match energy is basically low vibing or low level, that's assuming that or not giving grace. That in my opinion, that's assuming that there hasn't been grace extended before. So what happens if you're repeatedly extending grace and there's a pattern of behavior?
Hmm.
Are you then saying it's not okay to match energy? Because clearly this is how this person operates. This is what this person understands. And so then what is the problem with matching the energy at that point?
So if it's gonna cause me to have to come down from the way that I operate and the way that I choose to show up in the world, then if it's a repetitive pattern, then it may be time for us to do something different as it relates to this particular relationship or this friendship. Like you're not gonna keep coming at me that same way. So I don't want to have to match your energy. Like I believe that when we bring ourselves down to a lower level to match someone else's negative energy, it impacts the way that we show up. And we have all had those interactions where somebody gives us some bad juju in the beginning of our morning and it sets the tone for our entire day. Like this thing happened to me in this morning. Somebody cut me off. Somebody did this. Or I came into the office and somebody said something negative to me, and I had a whole bad morning, or my whole day was bad because it started with that. And if I'm being honest, then to me, it means that I allowed that interaction to bring me down. If I was already having a good day, and then I'm matching this person's energy who's having their own bad day, I'm making a choice to come down to that level rather than staying where I was and allowing that thing to set the tone for the rest of my day. And I'm just saying that I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that.
I agree with that. And I'm not saying that it should always be like a tit for tat, especially when it comes to an exchange of words and how you're treating people. But in terms of rules of engagement, so, we have a question here, like, how's it shown up in your life? And I'm thinking of some very specific examples of where matching energy feels fair in terms of reciprocity. So if you think about, I'm gonna just use these are not things that have happened to me, but these are things that I have absolutely heard about from friends, or maybe a little bit I've experienced as well. So if you think about, okay, I can think of three right off top. Mother's Day, Father's Day.
Hmm.
So for Mother's Day, the person is like, I don't know what to do. I can't figure it out. I'd rather just not do anything. But Father's Day come around and you don't do something, they be like, oh, what? Don't nobody ever do anything for me. You didn't plan anything. Or, you know how I go out of my way for gifts. Like that is
Hmm.
just, even though that's not one of my love languages, I love to think of creative ways to love on people for their birthdays, holidays, whatever it is.
I
We
think you just like to be buying shit on Amazon, but that we can talk about that later.
That's no, but I do like gift giving. And so we spend a lot of thought and energy into gifts. And then
Hmm.
when it's not reciprocated, we'd be like, what? I guess like gifts are not important. And so
Hmm.
we're going to match that energy. I'm not going to
Hmm.
put in all this thought and effort in getting gifts anymore. If you value this thing, then that's how we're giving gifts in this relationship. Or think about women who have like sat through in their relationships, like inconsideration after inconsideration, and then they finally put themselves first, and then the partner is like, it's not just women. I'll take that back and say people in relationships, one person in the relationship has been selfish for the entirety of it.
Hmm.
All of a sudden the other person is like, okay, this doesn't work for me, I'm gonna do me. And then they're like, oh my gosh, you broke my heart. Why would, like, that's reciprocity. That's
Hmm.
matching the same energy they have been given off this whole time. That is karma. Like what goes around comes around. That's just like that's physics, right? That's got to be
So
just like.
I knew this was going to be a hot topic, but I just want y'all to know Shatay is yelling at me right now.
I'm
And I
not
know y'all
yelling.
hear
I'm not
how loud she
yelling.
is.
I'm passionate. I'm just passionate. I just don't understand how it's like. So is someone supposed to just continue being a doormat?
No, it's not been a doormat for me. And the thing that I'm trying to reconcile for myself is being able to practice what it is that I preach. So I cannot preach it. So I'm jumping out right now to say the way that my energy sometimes around like gift giving and expecting that in return, it is wrong. I need to change that. And I can't help my automatic thoughts sometimes, but it's up to us to change the way that we expect. You are supposed to give without expecting anything in
Agreed.
return. And
Agreed.
if you enjoy gift giving, then you need to give the gift and let it alone because that's what you want to do. You can't expect people to love and reciprocate and do things in the way that you want them just because you do it in that way and be mad because they don't. Because then if you do that, then you're giving with the wrong spirit.
Agreed. I
Right.
1000% agree. Keep
And
going because
so
I got
and
five.
and so yeah, you got a thought. You done had several. So let me get me a few. So and this is the other thing. You trying to make me forget what I was about to say.
No.
But this is the other thing, right? You were talking about that's karma, and you talked about justice, and you talked about all those other things. We cannot have these relationships with our higher powers and these spiritual ties and all these things where we want grace for all the wrong that we do. And then when it comes to relationship with other people, we just talk about justice and fairness. Because yes, there we so many times we want grace for us and justice for other people, right? And we just got to be able to call a thing a thing. And this is not me riding in on some high horse. I'm calling this out for myself.
Hmm.
A lot of times I want grace for myself and I want justice for other people. I'll be like, oh Lord, forgive me. I messed that junk up. I'm sorry. And then somebody else do something to me. I'd be like, hope your ass get what you have the day you deserve. So we can't operate in that way. And I'm calling myself
Hmm.
to be better than what I've been. So I believe that a lot of I'm not, and this is not across the board. I believe a lot of that. I'm gonna match your energy. I'm gonna meet you with the same thing you met me with. It sets me up for disappointment because I'm expecting what I'm giving from someone else and the best of them when I don't know what they got going on. And I believe that we set ourselves up for disappointment when we give with the heart of expectancy.
For me, it's not expectancy, and I will own that my response because I do disagree and think that it's okay to sometimes match energy, and I'll explain context around why I know it's wrapped up in my own stuff, but also I still going back. You're saying like the grace, expecting grace, or wanting grace and expecting justice. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I think, of course, if it's like one instance and you're like on some get back, that's different. But I think there are times where like you can extend grace over and over and over,
Hmm.
and at a certain point enough is enough, and I think that is where I am speaking from. I come from a space or a very extended season in my life, like the majority of my life, where I was like over functioning in relationships, like it was always about what the other person wanted or needed, like to
Hmm.
like the expense of my own feelings, and I'm a overgive and I'm a overlove, and I the therapist literally just said that like recently we're
Hmm.
over lovers.
Hmm.
um and now I'm in a season of, well, no, what I need and what I want is just as important as what the
Hmm.
other person needs and want. That doesn't mean that what they need and want doesn't matter or it's not, it's not valid. But why do I have to compromise how I feel, what I need, my boundaries, right?
No, you don't.
Just because I need to extend grace to this
Hmm.
person or because I'm trying to like understand where they are. I think we should absolutely have understanding and have grace, and to the point where it is like compromising our peace, our energy, our joy. I'm just saying the boundary is okay, in my opinion. And I'm in a season where I'm a little bit matching energy because I've got to stop
Hmm.
the over loving, over functioning, over giving that I've been accustomed to doing.
And what I'm saying is, if you continue to show up to a space where you know that there is low vibrational energy, then that is your choice.
That's
I
fair.
would
That's
I
fair.
at some point I'm gonna make a choice to no longer show up in that space.
Yeah.
If I have to show up there and be low vibrational as hell because that's how you have chosen to live your life.
Yeah.
We can opt out of those things.
Yeah.
I'm not asking anybody to show up in a space and be a carpet to be walked on
Yeah.
for a person and all the time. What I'm saying is I want to show up as my true and authentic self. If that is showing up in this space with love and with grace and with, you know, bringing love when we come and leaving love in that space when we depart, I want to be able to do that. And if it becomes more of a burden for me to do that just because you want that bullshit, for lack of a better term, then
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to keep showing up to that space. But if I continue to show up to that space, then I am making a choice.
Mm.
And if I make the choice to show up to that space, then I'm promising myself that I'm going to show up as my best self and not show up there, being upset with the person for not being able to reciprocate what it is that I give.
Yeah.
If they've made that choice to live their life in that way, and then I'm going to bring my energy down to be in that space with that person, then I think that's some bullshit. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think what you're explaining though, it's assuming that there's maybe argument or some sort of negativity. And on my end, the matching the energy could just be like effort. Like
Hmm.
if you don't, I've actually said this to a person before, a friendship, and unfortunately, a friendship ended.
So you mean you stop showing up to the space?
I
Right.
basically,
Okay.
no, I was just like, I notice I do all of these things.
Hmm.
You're not matching that energy because it could be positive too. If I'm giving, if I'm loving, you're not matching the giving. You're not matching the loving. You're not trying to spend the time.
Hmm.
I'm not doing more than you are doing anymore. I'm matching your energy. So they weren't calling. They weren't trying to meet up because I was living in a different state at the time. And this was like early 20s. And so that I matched the energy, and guess what? We're acquaintances. We're not really
Hmm.
like close friends anymore. And so I'm just saying, I hear you. Like, yes, we should be higher thinking, higher minded, have healthy relationships.
Hmm.
And I'm just saying it's not always a negative connotation to matching energy.
Hmm.
Sometimes it is for your in your best interest to do
Hmm.
so. That's the only thing I would argue.
And I think, most of the time, what I or my understanding, let me be careful with my I statements with you before you jump on me. Um, with my understanding, most of the time all of the time when I've heard people say, keep that same energy, it's been a negative connotation associated with it. And that's my starting point that I'm coming from. But I understand what you're saying too. And I think we're saying the same thing in that realm as it relates to just deciding that I'm not going to show up in this space anymore if you can't, meet me and love me in the way that I want to be loved in. And so, that's kind of how it's shown up in my life.
Mhm.
Um, I can opt out. I ain't got to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it's just that I know that I want to live a life where um, there are safe spaces for me to show up and just be happy and just be carefree and to love, because there is so much in our lives that creates stress. There's the hardness of the work that we both do and all of that stuff. So when I show up in spaces, I don't want to show up there and have to meet you on some low vibrational plane because that's where you are in that moment. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I hear you. Um, I'm still just I hear what you're saying, and
Right.
I'm
You
still
just want to be
like,
a jerk.
I don't want to be a jerk. I just want everybody.
Come on. Come on. It's about to be some unrealistic shit that you about to say. Go ahead.
I want everybody to feel what's being felt. So, y'all, I love the movies at the end where it's like all the get back. Can we talk about the
Hmm.
Equalizer? How Denzel just going around like seeking vengeance on everybody. There's something in my spirit where I'm like, they felt it, especially there's a wrongdoing. So I absolutely hear you when you're like, people deserve grace, and it feels amazing when
Yeah, I
there's
just want y'all to know that this is who I married.
there's
Like, I
there's
chose
some
this.
get back.
I,
Just
I put a ring on this. This when I tell you, it's like got a get back spirit. And I knew this was gonna be a difficult episode because she like if you see her eyes rolling around in her head, she is searching for the justification. Like I want to be able to beat people up when they do me wrong because that's what I hear.
And what's wrong with that? If they,
There's nothing wrong with it as long as you know don't be walking around here talking about grace and mercy all the time.
yeah,
If you just want justice, just want that for yourself too. And you know, keep that same energy for yourself. And I don't want that. I'm not great at this.
hmm.
I will take it to the floor.
Oh,
I need
why
time.
you talking
Don't do
all
that.
noble and
Don't do
stuff?
that. I'm not. I've given my disclaimer. I don't need that from you.
I'm just co-signing. I'm just trying to support.
No, I want to be better. I have a desire to be better, and I'm not gonna always be better. But I want to be able to understand that when things happen, when there's an incident, my automatic thoughts may be, "All right, I want to take it to the flow," but I want to be able to allow my healing to process through that and give the person grace. Or if it's been too many times, then to opt out of that space, even if it's for the moment,
Yeah.
to be able to maintain the peace that I prayed for. I can't pray to have peace. God, give me that peace. And then the first time I have a run in with the world, then the peace is gone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to surrender my peace and my joy to some incident because I'm so focused on, I hope they get what they deserve. Or I hope you keep that. I don't care what you do. Like, I hope you get your healing.
I hear you, and I think I'm just in a different uh different moment of the journey with my own self, my own healing. And
Mm
so for me, I am at a place where I'm learning to have more grace for myself because
hmm.
I've
Mm hmm.
always had grace for everybody else. I am learning to stand up for myself and deliver the thing with grace and with kindness
Mm
and
hmm.
not care how the other person receives it because for so long it was like I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Mm
So
hmm.
I operated so much into like the extreme of the other side
Mm
that
hmm.
I am now um challenging myself like as part of my own healing and growth in my and exercise of my worthiness, quite honestly, that I am like I'm putting boundaries, I'm saying the things even if it might hurt your feelings, or I'm gonna match the energy like
Mm
that's,
hmm.
and I'm going to learn even if it's uncomfortable for me. I'm learning how to even sit in those spaces. Now I don't want to go too far in this extreme either, but I'm basically learning how to have balance with both of those. Like I want to have grace for people, but in this season, I need to learn how to have grace for myself because I
Mm hmm.
haven't for so long,
Mm hmm.
you know? And so I think it's just, yes, I want to be there for other people, but in terms of parenting our inner child, I'm learning how to be there for Shate
Mm
and
hmm.
in this season.
I dig it. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you live with talking in third person about yourself too. But
Why? Why? You see? Do you see? And then if I said something smart, then it'd be on me because I'm matching energy. But do you see how he fired the first shot? But it's a
no
but
shots.
it's
There's
but
peace here.
I'm tit for tat though.
There's peace here. There's love here.
Uh huh.
There's joy here.
Go ahead.
Huh, more recent example, more recent controversial example. So it'll be a couple weeks before y'all see this episode, but um, Kevin Samuels just passed away a couple days ago,
Mm,
and like there are people that are all but dancing on that man's grave.
mm.
And for me, I understand. There's a part of me that understands that when you injure people, you don't get to choose how they respond to
Yeah.
the injury. I think the same is true with what's going on
Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Will Smith and Chris
Mm-hmm.
Rock. I think the same is true with what's going on with Kanye West and Pete Davidson.
Mm.
You know, well, you know, he started it, and you know, Kevin Samuels, he talked crazy about black women for a long time, so they glad that he's gone, and you know, pointing out that the man died alone and all those types of things, and I think for my own morals and values and standards, I'm not pushing those things on anyone else. You do what makes you happy, but I cannot imagine for me. Um, that I would be comfortable walking around, holding on to that much anger for me to be essentially dancing on a man's
Yeah.
grave in his death.
Yeah.
That is not my moral base.
Yeah.
It's not where I am. I can have disagreed with your stance on so many things in life, but if you pass away, then um, I pray that your people are okay, and it's expected an unexpected death. Like, no, I didn't agree with you, but also that's a brother who is no longer here with his family
Yeah.
and no longer has the opportunity to maybe even get the reconciliation or the healing that he needed to cause him to say those things. That does not mean that there was not injury in his words, but I also pray that, and I also know that we are all responsible for our own healing,
Yeah.
right? The people who injured us, sometimes knowingly and unknowingly, they don't need that bad juju for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to pray for the people who, knowingly and unknowingly injure you, right? When people don't need me to match their energy, and how dare I be asking God to give me grace, but to say, oh, but your stuff is so egregious. I hope that, it comes back on you in this way. But I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I think that we all strive to find balance in like standing up for ourselves and not being somebody's doormat and all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think the conversation is not just um about, telling people y'all need to be better. This is not a wag of the finger kind of moment. It's just having the conversation around like me wanting to be better for my own self.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking you keep saying we can't ask for grace for ourselves and then not extend to others. And for some reason that's not really resonating with me. And I'm sitting here like reflecting on why it's not resonating. And I'm
Cause you a bully. I
I
ain't mean to
said
say that
grace
out
for
loud.
myself, first
I ain't
of
mean to say that
all.
out loud. I'm gonna let you have your statement.
I And it's because of how critical I am for myself. So I don't recall a lot of moments. That's not even how we pray. We've talked about how
Mhm.
like we feel about, saying in prayers like we're not worthy, we're not deserving. Like that's just not
Mhm.
we don't pray in that way. But even on the grace point, we that's not to say we don't miss the mark, but I think for me, I'm not quick to really pray for grace or ask for grace because I'm so critical on myself
Mhm.
already. Like I am the person I am the most critical of is myself. And so there's something there. It's not a fully formed thought, but just the idea of, how can I ask for grace for myself and then not give it to someone else? I think for me, just go back to why I have this position on this conversation is I've always had grace for everybody else, and I've never had it for myself. And so there's something about that, just if I'm asking for it, that is not resonating with me because I don't have a lot of practice with giving it to myself or even asking for it for myself. It's always
Mhm.
like you should have known better, you should have done better. Oh, why you do that? Why you say that? Like just
Mhm.
judgy of myself.
But I really think that you and I also have a lot of conversations where I have to tell you like, stop being so hard on yourself,
Yeah.
right? And really at the heart of what we're talking about, and it's full circle for me, is that a lot of times when we can't extend grace is because we haven't learned how to give it to ourselves.
That's a word.
You know what I'm saying? And what
Facts.
I hear you saying is, I ain't really learned how to give grace to myself, so why should I? And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just indicative of the healing work that we all still have to do.
Hmm.
And we all still have like these areas in our lives where there is still more healing to do.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that this is not a wag of the finger to anybody else. This is pointing out that I know that I still have my own work to do. And I don't mind being exposed,
Yeah.
you know? And we gonna talk trash because that's what we do.
Yes.
But we
Always.
we gonna love each other right on through it. But I'm always gonna tell you to stop being hard on yourself. Like, and you tell me all the time, stop talking about my husband like that,
Hmm.
right? So it's the same thing. And I struggle with finding the space between grace and discipline. Like I don't want to give myself so much grace that I just let myself get away with everything.
Hmm.
But there's also space for discipline and finding that balance. And so I want to keep a different energy,
Hmm.
a better energy for myself and then for other people. Because if I learn to have grace for myself, then I can learn to extend that to other people as well. And it ain't always got to be a fight. I just want peace, man. I wanna live a good life. I wanna enjoy myself, and I don't be around here fighting with people about no stupid shit
Mm.
because it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not a life well lived, and we just have so many worries and so many concerns on a day to day basis when Uh, even this morning, we're able to just go out and get groceries and laugh and joke and do all of those things together that are just so simple and provide so much peace. And it got a little too peoply outside for you, and
Oh my
you're ready to come
gosh. I
home,
shut down.
but that's okay. I think to be able to take a pause and be grateful for what it is that you have and understand that whoever may be showing up on with that low vibrational energy may not have that same peace
Mhm.
that they're coming with. And okay, that's your stuff, but I ain't gotta get into that because I have this thing over here that I'm thankful for and I'm grateful for, and I choose not to allow whatever's going on in your life to bring me down to that level. I just don't want to
Mhm.
be down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of different things along this topic, and I'm trying to figure out how to bring it back to the haze, especially since this is like probably one of the first episodes ever where we're about to talk about a haze we don't have the same position on. Like,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that we're completely opposite, but we just have different perspectives or just are at different points within our relationship with this
Hmm.
topic, basically. And so I'll start us off with the haze and how I navigate it from my perspective. Another thing that I've been sitting here processing, let me tell you why therapy is real, because it gives you the tools to like really reflect on your life in a richer way. Like things that I know our therapist would ask me, I'm over here
Hmm.
asking myself. And
Hmm.
that's beautiful. But
You
I'm
might save us a copay
so
too with that. Sorry.
I'm thinking about the whole what you said about not being able to extend grace to other people because I haven't learned to extend it to myself yet, which is a whole word. And I'm thinking about it's got to be deeper than that because in practice I have been able to extend grace to other people, like lots of it.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to get to a haze. I'm thinking the root of it then for me is not the inability to extend grace, but why have I been able to extend grace to them and not to me? And I
Hmm.
think the baseline of almost everything, in my opinion, in terms of healing, is what our opinion of our worthiness is.
Hmm.
And so there's been a lot of like striving to um, earn my worthiness, earn the love, so me going out of my way to do things for other people is not just because I'm nice, it's because like if I do this thing, then I get more approval or then I get more love
Hmm.
or then I get as if somehow that is what my worth is built
Right.
upon. And so I guess what is a haze, y'all? It's all of it. It's like
Right.
just having the self-awareness,
Hmm.
having the ability to act according to what you believe or who you want to be. That's
Hmm.
definitely a haze. And in terms of navigating it, you know what, y'all, I'ma just be real. Like sometimes, like I'm gonna go for the get back,
Hmm.
and sometimes
Some
I'll do better.
sometimes.
and
Me.
I'm going to be patient with myself as I grow into a better version of myself. I think that's how I'm navigating. What are your thoughts on the haze and the
Um,
navigation?
the haze is all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to deal with your automatic thoughts.
Mm,
The first thing that comes to my mind is just my automatic thoughts, like,
mm-hmm.
and having to go back and do some repair that. Um,
That part, yeah.
Understanding that really it's not as much about the energy that I put out in the air really has to do with how I feel about me, you know, like you were saying, and having to go back and understanding I still have some healing work to do around those things.
Yeah.
And I can externalize that and make it about other people. But if we dig deep for real and we, continue having those therapeutic conversations, we understand that it's really about how I feel about myself.
Everything
And
is.
if I feel like I deserve forgiveness for some of the things that I've done and some of the words that I've spoken, right? I think something I saw earlier in the day was like someone said, live a life um, so that when you die, people won't celebrate it. And I get it,
They
you
won't
know,
celebrate your death.
like they won't celebrate your death.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Um, and it's something that I'm still, kind of dealing with. But I think the haze for me is just being able to show up differently, man, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that some of the disappointments that I experience are because I have not taken the time to just be in this space and to find my own happiness here. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm letting the world and external things determine how I'm going to show up
Mm-hmm.
rather than bringing the peace and the joy and the love that I have and bringing it to the world.
Yeah.
I don't want to be controlled by external stuff. I don't want external validation or invalidation to set the tone for how I choose to show up. That's really all
And that's
I'm
tough.
saying.
That's a tough thing to
It's
do.
tough. That's the haze, though, right?
Yeah.
It is making a choice to show up in this way with my peace, my joy, my love, and all of those things, despite what the world has going on.
And that and the ability to do that is, I think, depends on how well you are rooted in your enoughness.
Mhm.
Which is why a lot of times, you can't people react out of emotion, react out of the stories that they've told themselves because of
Mhm.
insecurities, not enoughness, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm. I want to, and I'm a big advocate of men being able to be entitled to their emotions.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to feel all my feels. I want to be entitled to my emotions, but I don't want to be ruled by them.
Yeah.
I don't want to operate from a place of I'm just emoting.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we are better than that. We should be able to bring our emotions, recognize them for what they are, but bring them through the filter of our healing
Hmm.
and choose to show up a different way. And it won't always happen, but I can be better. Being able to reconcile the books on that situations and
Hmm.
say that I want to do better than that next time around.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like it. Any
What,
lessons
you
learned?
agree on something, or are you just tired of talking to me?
And I'm supposed to be the bigger person and not react to that bit.
It was love, baby.
Hmm.
It was.
Child, lessons I've learned. You pick your battles, goddamn shit. And
How
so,
you feel?
yes. Anyways, any lessons you've learned? Or it
Um,
sounds like we're still learning. I don't know that
yeah,
I've definitively learned anything in particular except for, um, yeah, it's just I have more work to do on my own self.
yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for me is that I just got more work to do.
Hmm.
That I can be better, and that I have the desire to be better at this thing called life and relationship, and that the biggest thing is again taking on the posture of a habitual student.
Yep.
Like I don't want to come down hard on myself because I didn't get it right.
Hmm.
But when you have the posture of a habitual student, then you give yourself permission to learn something new. Like I received some new information, or I saw myself show up in this space in a way that I feel like is less than what I believe to be the higher version of myself. And I think that I can be better. I ain't gotta be mad at myself for how I showed up in that space. And I can just say, I believe I can be better, and there's something I can learn from that. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson in everything. You either win or you learn.
Yeah.
And I think even in the winnings, they're learning. So turn up
Yeah.
for that. What's the music for this moment? This get back spirit is keeping that same energy.
So
What's the vibe?
this one goes to my boy Big Crit. He
Hey.
has a song called Mixed Messages. And I understand about myself that sometimes I am a walking contradiction.
Child.
We don't, again, I knew you was going to get some get back from earlier. It wasn't that this episode was not going to go off without you getting your get back. This your same energy, but I love you anyway. But yeah, mixed messages is really just about like I I want to do the right thing, but sometimes I do the wrong thing. Like
Mhm.
I want to give back, but I also want to keep my wealth for myself.
Mhm.
Like, I want to be faithful to the promise that I made to do this thing, but I also want
Do
to
what I
cheat
want
on
to
the
do.
diet and do
Mhm.
all of those things and kick it. And so I realized that sometimes, the right number of things can happen for me to contradict the very healing message that I may have been given. And mixed messages is really just about that. So salute the Big Crit for putting in a rap my soul,
Salute.
my boy.
Nice. Well, this was I think a healthy conversation. I think we should
Mm.
find more topics where we kind of disagree.
Oh,
Not be.
you'll be great at that. Just
We're also like higher minded, keep the
mhm.
peace, and it's nice to actually like have
And
some.
people need to know you be ready to get out here and fight people every day.
I don't want to fight people, but let me tell you what I'm really great at, especially at work. I've learned how to work through this. The angry Kermit meme, where it's just like he just going off. I'll be like, I have
Yeah.
the angry Kermit energy like a
Yeah.
lot of times. Like, let me write this.
I
Type
think
my
that,
last email.
yes, that is you all day in a nice way though.
Yeah, I know how to clean it up. But yeah.
But I think it's important to just have conversations about being in progress, man,
Mhm.
being in process,
Mhm.
um, and trying to be better. Not necessarily getting it right, but just trying to be better and
Mhm.
creating a safe space to have a conversation around. Having not arrived, and we say that healing and wholeness are not destinations;
Yep.
they're
It's the
journeys,
journeys.
right? And we are electing to take the journey together and to share that with you all as well. So,
Yeah. Again, not teaching anything. We're just sharing what
Shine.
we go
I'm gonna tell you what this has told everybody
through.
that we ain't teaching nobody nothing. We just having a conversation. Are you not entertained?
Well, we appreciate y'all for being here with us episode after episode.
Yeah,
If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. You'll get messages, alerts when the newest episodes drop.
yeah.
And if you happen to be streaming from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we'd love to get some high ratings and some
Hmm.
reviews. So yeah, that we could share these stories throughout our community, and hopefully they help other people as much as they help us.
Absolutely.
And with that, like we always say, life will always present us with a haze, but we all have everything we need within us
Yeah,
to navigate through it.
that's right. And you're not alone.
Mm-mm.
Um, Join us next time and every time,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna take the journey together.
That's right.
We appreciate y'all. One time for the one
Holla.
time. Peace.